I believed the truce between us was solid, built on my silence and their polite tolerance. At 33, sitting at grandfather's remembrance dinner, I felt safe enough to lower my guard. Then my cousin handed me her phone to share a picture, and a message banner slid down the glass. It was a group chat named The Real Family. My parents, my siblings, my aunt, they were all in there. I was the only one missing. The mahogany dining table in my parents' dining room was long enough to require shouting if you wanted to speak to someone at the far end. But tonight, we were all clustered near the center, creating an illusion of intimacy that felt as brittle as the crystal wine glasses. It was the first family remembrance dinner for Grandfather Hawthorne since the funeral, exactly 3 months ago. The air smelled of roasted lamb and expensive candles, a scent that I had always associated with safety, but which now settled heavy in my stomach. I was 33 years old. I had a title at a logistics firm that I had earned without a single phone call from my father. I had a condominium in the city that I paid for with my own salary. I had a savings account that was modest but growing, by every metric of adulthood. I was independent, yet sitting there between my mother and my younger brother, Caleb, I felt the familiar, suffocating regression that happens the moment you walk through the door of your childhood home. I became Sarah, the difficult one, Sarah, the intense one, Sarah, who needed to be managed rather than included. My mother, elegant in a black cashmere sweater that likely cost more than my first car, reached over and adjusted the napkin in my lap. Her hand lingered for a second, a touch that was meant to look affectionate to anyone watching, but felt controlling to me. "You are awfully quiet tonight." "Sarah," she said, her voice pitched just loud enough for the rest of the table to hear. I smiled, taking a sip of water. "I am just listening." "Mom, it is nice to have everyone together," she sighed, a small, tragic sound. "That is just it. Though, you are always just listening. It makes you so hard to read. Sometimes I look at you and I have no idea what you are thinking. It makes people nervous. You know, it makes you seem like you are not a team player." The phrase landed in the center of my chest like a stone. Not a team player. It was corporate speak weaponized for the dinner table. I looked around. My father was carving a slice of pear at the head of the table. My Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert were murmuring to each other across the centerpiece. My cousin, Becca, was scrolling under the table, the blue light illuminating her chin. "I'm not trying to make anyone nervous," I said, keeping my voice level. "I am just tired. It has been a long quarter at work." My father cleared his throat, the sound commanding immediate silence. He had grandfather's eyes, but none of his warmth. Grandfather had been a man who built things. My father was a man who maintained them, and the anxiety of maintenance had worn him down into something sharp and defensive. Speaking of work and quarters, my father said, setting down his knife, "We need to briefly discuss the Hawthorne Family Growth Fund." The table went still. The fund was the golden thread that tied us all together, the legacy grandfather had built to ensure that his grandchildren would have a safety net for education. First homes, or business ventures, it was supposed to be the great equalizer. "We are going to be doing some restructuring in the coming weeks," my father announced, not looking at anyone in particular. He focused on the rim of his wine glass. "Just some administrative housekeeping, modernizing the portfolio." Uncle Robert nodded vigorously. "It is long overdue. The market is volatile. We need to tighten the ship." I felt a prickle of confusion. Grandfather had always been transparent about the fund. He used to send us quarterly letters, handwritten, explaining exactly where the money was and why. Since he died, those letters had stopped. "What kind of restructuring?" I asked. My father's eyes snapped to mine. He looked annoyed that I had spoken. "Just structural. Sarah, nothing that concerns the day-to-day. It is complicated tax strategy." I frowned. "But does that change the distribution schedule?" I was planning to submit a request next year for the down payment on a larger place. "Like we talked about," my mother laughed. A sharp, tinkling sound. "Oh, Sarah, always worrying about the next dime." "I am not worrying," I said, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. I am asking a question. Grandfather always said the fund was for us to use when we were ready to build something. It is routine, my father said, his voice hard. It is just routine. Sarah, do not make it into an interrogation. You would not understand the nuances of the new compliance laws anyway. He could not look me in the eye. That was the first tremor, though I did not recognize it as one at the time. My father was an arrogant man, but he was usually precise. If he knew the answer, he would have lectured me for 20 minutes on compliance laws just to prove he was smarter than me. But he did not lecture. He shut me down. I leaned back, defeated, fine, routine, beside me. Caleb was aggressively cutting his lamb, refusing to look up. He knew something. Caleb always knew something. He was the golden boy, the one who never left the nest, the one who played golf with Dad every Sunday. The silence that followed was thick, filled only by the scrape of silver on china. I need to show you these photos from the vineyard trip, Becca said suddenly, her voice bright and artificial, cutting through the tension. She was sitting directly across from me. She leaned over the table, extending her arm to hand me her phone. The screen was unlocked, displaying a gallery of high-resolution grapes and smiling faces. Here, look at the one of me and Mom, she said. I took the phone. It was warm from her hand. The photo was beautiful. Becca and Aunt Linda standing in front of a rolling Californian vineyard. Glasses raised. It is lovely. Becca, I said. I went to swipe to the next photo. As my finger touched the glass, a banner notification slid down from the top of the screen. It was a message from WhatsApp. The sender was listed as Mom. The message preview was short. She is asking questions about the restructuring. We need to distract her. But it was the name of the group chat that froze the blood in my veins. The group chat was titled, The Real Family, and underneath the title, in smaller gray text, were the names of the participants: Dad, Mom, Caleb, Aunt Linda, Uncle Robert, Becca, everyone. Everyone at this table was in that chat. Everyone except me. The notification lingered for 3 seconds, an eternity, before sliding back up into the void. I stared at the photo of the vineyard. The smiling faces seemed to warp. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a physical violence that felt entirely at odds with the stillness of the room. The real family. Sarah? Becca asked. You okay? I looked up. My face felt numb, like I had been slapped with ice. I forced the muscles of my mouth to curve upward. Yeah, I said. My voice sounded distant, tinny. Great lighting, really nice. I handed the phone back to her. Becca took it, glanced at the screen, and then her eyes widened imperceptibly. She must have seen the lingering notification, or perhaps she just saw the ghost on my face. She quickly locked the phone and shoved it face down onto the tablecloth. Who is asking questions? Who needs to be distracted? The message had come from my mother. I looked at her. She was calmly buttering a roll, her face a mask of serene maternal concern. She had texted that while sitting 3 feet away from me. She had typed those words, hit send, and then returned to her dinner without missing a beat. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I thought I might be sick on the centerpiece. I need to use the restroom, I said, pushing my chair back. I walked out of the dining room, down the hallway lined with portraits of ancestors who suddenly looked like strangers, and into the powder room. I locked the door and leaned back against the wood, breathing hard. The real family. It was not just a group chat. It was a declaration. It was a line drawn in the sand. There was the family that performed for the public, and then there was the real family, the core unit, the one that made decisions. I was not in the core. I turned on the faucet and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at my reflection. I looked like them. I had the hawthorn jaw, the dark hair, the pale eyes, but I was not one of them. I went back to the table. I sat through dessert. I ate a slice of lemon tart that tasted like sawdust. I listened to them talk about summer plans, about a wedding in the Hamptons, about Caleb's new car. I nodded. I smiled. I performed. But now, I was watching. I watched how my father and Uncle Robert exchanged glances when the fund was mentioned again. I watched how my mother texted under the table, and how, a second later, a soft vibration hummed against the table surface from Caleb's phone. They were coordinating. In real time, they were editing the reality I was living in. I left as soon as coffee was served. I claimed a headache. It was not a lie. The drive back to my apartment took 40 minutes. Usually, I listened to podcasts or music, but tonight I drove in silence. The silence of the car was a relief compared to the noise in my head. As I watched the highway markers flash by, memories began to reorder themselves. It was like a kaleidoscope shifting. The pieces were the same, but the picture had changed. Last Christmas, they had changed the time of brunch from 11 to 10 in the morning. When I arrived at 11, everyone was already eating. "We thought we told you," my mother had said. It must have been a miscommunication. 2 months ago, Caleb had gone on a ski trip with a group of friends. Except, looking back, I remembered seeing Aunt Linda's suitcase in the hallway that same weekend. They had all gone. They had gone skiing without me and told me it was a friend's trip. The birthday dinner for Uncle Robert that I found out about on Instagram the next day. It was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. They said, "We did not want to bother you after work." Exclusion was not an accident. It was not a series of unfortunate logistical errors. It was a system. It was architecture. They had built a house without a door for me. I pulled into my parking garage and sat in the dark for a long time. The engine ticked as it cooled. Why? That was the question that gnawed at me. I was not a drug addict. I was not a criminal. I had never stolen from them, never embarrassed them publicly. I was boringly responsible. Why the secrecy? Why the need for a separate channel titled The Real Family? Unless it was not about who I was, unless it was about what I might see. I went upstairs to my apartment. It was quiet and clean. My sanctuary. I made a cup of tea. Not because I wanted it, but because the ritual calmed my shaking hands. I sat on my sofa and picked up my phone. I needed to know if I was crazy. I needed to test the reality. I opened a text thread with Caleb. "Hey," I typed. "Fun dinner? Quick question. Dad mentioned the restructuring timeline was 6 weeks. But I thought at dinner he said 6 months? I can't remember." I waited. The 3 dots appeared almost instantly. 6 weeks. Caleb replied. "We want to get it done before the quarter ends so the transfers settle." I stared at the screen. "We want to get it done. Transfers. Got it," I typed back. "And are we still doing the separate account verification for the beneficiaries?" I forgot what we decided. It was a trap. We had never discussed account verification. We had never discussed anything. The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Yeah, same as we said in the chat. Just send the routing numbers to the new rep. My breath hitched. As we said in the chat, he realized his mistake almost immediately. A second later, a new message popped up. I mean, like Dad said at dinner. Whatever he said. I did not reply. I took a screenshot of the conversation, then I saved it to a folder on my phone I just created, simply titled Evidence. I could not confront them. Not yet. If I screamed, if I cried, if I demanded to be added to the chat, they would gaslight me. They would say I was being paranoid. They would say it was just a chat for logistics because I was so busy with work. They would smooth it over, and then they would make a new chat with a different name. I needed to understand the scope of this. I opened my laptop. I created a new document. I called it Timeline. I started working backward. August 12th. Grandfather enters hospice. August 14th. Father takes power of attorney over the personal accounts. August 20th. I ask about the trust documents. Mother says they are safe. September 1st. Grandfather passes away. September 5th. The funeral. Uncle Robert mentions liquidity issues to a guest. I overhear it. When I ask, he says he was talking about his boat. September 15th. I receive a check for $5,000 from the estate. It is marked Final Distribution. I assume it is a mistake. I call Dad. He says, "It is just a preliminary disbursement. Do not worry." October 1st. Becca buys a new Range Rover. She works part-time at a gallery. I typed for hours. I combed through my calendar, my emails, my text messages. I looked for every instance where money was mentioned, where a plan was changed, where I felt that strange, cold wind of exclusion. The pattern was terrifying. Since grandfather got sick, the family had become a fortress, and the walls were built out of money. Grandfather's fund, the Hawthorne Family Growth Fund, was worth millions. He had built a chain of hardware supply stores that dominated the Midwest in the 80s. He had invested wisely. The fund was supposed to be untouchable, managed by an independent firm to prevent exactly this kind of infighting. So how were they restructuring it? And why did they need a chat room without me to do it? It was 2 a.m. My eyes burned. I needed to talk to someone who was not family. I searched for the contact information for the fund. I had an old letter from grandfather, scanned in my Dropbox. It had a letterhead, Redwood Crest Trust Services. There was a phone number. I knew it was the middle of the night. I expected a voicemail. I needed to hear the voicemail, just to confirm that the firm still existed, that there was a professional entity standing between my family and the money. I dialed the number. Thank you for calling Redwood Crest Trust Services. Our office hours are 9 to 5, Eastern Standard Time. I listened to the robotic voice. It offered a directory. I punched in the extension for Beneficiary Services. You have reached the desk of Elise Garner, Senior Fiduciary Assistant. Please leave a message. I waited for the beep. Hi, this is Sarah Wood. I am a beneficiary of the Hawthorne Family Growth Fund. I was looking for some clarification regarding the restructuring timeline and the new distribution protocols. My father mentioned some changes, and I just wanted to ensure my contact information is current. Please call me back at this number. I hung up. I felt foolish. It was a shot in the dark. I tried to sleep, but my mind was a racing engine. I kept seeing the banner notification, the real family. The next morning, I was at my desk at work by 8. I went through the motions of logistics management, routing shipping containers, approving invoices, but my brain was elsewhere. At 10:15, my cell phone rang. An unknown number. I picked it up. This is Sarah. Hello? Ms. Wood? This is Elise Garner from Redwood Crest. I received your voicemail. Her voice was professional, crisp, but there was an edge to it, a note of confusion. Hi. Elise, thank you for calling me back so quickly. Of course, I have to admit, I was a bit surprised to see a direct inquiry from you. Why? I asked. I am a beneficiary. Am I not? My heart started to pound again. Oh, yes. Certainly, Elise said, her typing audible in the background. It is just that, well, we usually handle all communications through the family thread. The consolidated requests usually come through your father or the designated representative. We have not had an individual beneficiary call in. Well, in over a year. The family thread. My grip tightened on the phone. I see, I said, forcing my voice to remain calm. I apologize for the break in protocol. I just wanted to double-check something personally. There was some confusion at dinner last night about the restructuring. There was a pause on the other end of the line, a long pause. The typing stopped. Restructuring? Elise asked. Her voice had changed. It was slower, more guarded. Yes, the restructuring of the fund. My father said it was routine tax strategy. Ms. Wood, Elise said, and now she sounded genuinely alarmed. There is no restructuring of the Hawthorne Fund. The fund is irrevocable. It cannot be restructured without a judicial order or the unanimous consent of all beneficiaries. The room seemed to tilt. Unanimous consent? I repeated. Yes, that is the foundational clause. But, I swallowed hard, if there is no restructuring, then what are the distribution requests you mentioned? You said consolidated requests? Elise hesitated. I could hear her shifting in her chair. Ms. Wood, I assumed you were aware. The monthly withdrawal requests? For the luxury property maintenance and the educational loans? They are all approved via the group signature portal. I have never signed anything. I whispered. The silence that stretched between us was heavy and absolute. I have never signed anything. Elise, I said, louder this time, and I have never seen a distribution for luxury property maintenance. On the other end of the line, I heard a sharp intake of breath. Ms. Wood, Elise said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. I am looking at a document right now from last month. It authorizes a transfer of $40,000 for emergency structural repairs to a property in Aspen, and it has your digital signature on it. The world stopped. My signature. They were not just cutting me out. They were using me. They were forging my name to drain the fund, and they had a group chat to coordinate the lies. Ms. Wood? Elise asked. Are you there? I am here. I said. My voice was cold, unrecognizable to my own ears. I need to come in. Elise, I need to see that document. I don't know if that is standard protocol without the representative present. I am coming in. I said, I will be there tomorrow at 9. Do not tell my father. Do not tell the representative. If there is a signature on that paper that belongs to me, I have a right to see it. Elise paused. I could hear the war between her training and her conscience. Okay, she said softly. Okay, just bring your ID. And Ms. Wood? Yes? If you come, you should know the file has a note on it. A restricted distribution note. What does it say? It says, Elise hesitated. It says, beneficiary Sarah Wood is currently incapacitated due to mental health struggles. All decisions delegated to the committee. I closed my eyes. The dinner, the comments, hard to read, not a team player, unstable. They had not just stolen my money, they had stolen my sanity. They had built a narrative that I was crazy, and they had sold it to the bank to justify the theft. I will see you tomorrow. Elise, I said. I hung up the phone. I stared at the blank wall of my office. I did not cry. I did not scream. I felt a cold, hard clarity settle over me. Like a suit of armor. The real family. They wanted me to be unstable? They wanted me to be a problem? Fine. I opened my laptop and went back to my timeline. I added a new entry. Today, war begins. I saved the document. Then I went back to work. I had a lot to prepare. Redwood Crest Trust Services occupied the entire 34th floor of a Glass Needle in the financial district. It was a building designed to intimidate, to make you feel small and lucky just to be allowed in the elevator. I wore my best suit, a charcoal gray tailored jacket and matching trousers, and I carried a leather notebook that I had bought specifically for this morning. I did not look like a woman who was being erased by her family. I looked like a woman who had come to audit them. I arrived at 9 in the morning exactly. The receptionist, a woman with hair so tight it looked painful, took my name without smiling. I am here to see Elise Garner. I said, I believe she is expecting me. She blinked, typing something into a sleek terminal. Sarah Wood. Yes. You can take a seat. I sat on a beige sofa that cost more than my car. I did not look at my phone. I kept my hands folded on my lap, resting on the notebook. Inside the notebook, I had written down 3 questions. Just 3. If I asked too many, I would look desperate. If I asked too few, I would look ignorant. I needed to walk the line between the two. I needed to look like a beneficiary who was simply doing her due diligence. The door to the inner sanctum opened, and a young woman stepped out. She looked to be about 25, dressed in a pencil skirt and a blouse that was slightly too large for her. She looked tired. This had to be Elise. Ms. Wood? She asked. I stood up and extended my hand. Sarah, it is nice to meet you. Elise? She took my hand. Her grip was damp. She was nervous. Good. Please, come back, she said. Her office was small, windowless, and stacked high with files. It was the office of someone who did the work, not someone who made the decisions. I sat in the guest chair, placing my notebook on the edge of her desk. I want to thank you for seeing me, I said, keeping my voice low and warm. I know it is unusual for me to come in directly. Elise adjusted her glasses. She looked at her computer screen, then at me, then back at the screen. It is fine, she said. It is just, well, like I said on the phone, usually your father or Mr. Henderson handles these reviews. Mr. Henderson? I asked. The family attorney. She said, he usually accompanies the family representative. I nodded, noting the name. Mr. Henderson. Another player on the board. I understand. I said, but since I was in the area, and since I'm turning 34 soon, I thought it was time I took a more active interest in the portfolio. Grandfather always said we should understand where our security comes from. Elise smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. She looked relieved that I was quoting Grandfather. It made me seem safe. Of course, she said. What can I help you with? I opened my notebook. First, I said, I would like to update my contact information. I have not received a quarterly statement in 3 years. I assumed they were being sent to my parents' address for safekeeping, but I would prefer them sent to my apartment now. Elise stiffened. She stopped typing. 3 years? She asked. Yes, I said. I have not seen a statement since the funeral. She turned fully toward her computer, her fingers flying across the keys, her brow furrowed. That is not right, she muttered. The system shows that the statements have been generated and delivered. To where? I asked. She hesitated. To the consolidated digital box. Access is granted to the representative, who is then supposed to disseminate the individual reports to the beneficiaries. I see, I said, keeping my face perfectly neutral. I must have missed the forward. Could you print the last 4 quarters for me? She looked at the printer in the corner, then back at me. I can print the summary pages, she said, but the full transaction history is restricted. Restricted? I asked. By whom? By the distribution committee. She said. I paused. Grandfather's trust did not have a distribution committee. It had a trustee. I was not aware we had a committee, I said softly. Elise looked uncomfortable. She lowered her voice. It was formed shortly after your grandfather passed, to assist with the complicated nature of the family needs. I leaned forward slightly. And what needs are those? Elise? She looked at me, and for a second, I saw a flash of pity in her eyes. It was the worst thing she could have offered me. Pity meant she knew something I did not want to be true. Ms. Wood, she said, I see here that there are notes on your file. Restricted distribution notes. I felt a cold drop of sweat slide down my spine. Notes, I repeated. What kind of notes? Elise turned the monitor slightly away from me. As if to shield me from the glare, they are behavioral summaries, she said, submitted by the family representative to justify the withholding of direct control. Behavioral summaries. The words hung in the air like smoke. Read one to me, I said. Please, I should not. Elise, I said. My voice was steel now. It is my file. It is my name. Read it. She took a breath. She looked at the screen. Dated November 14th, 2 years ago. She read, Beneficiary Sarah Wood continues to demonstrate significant emotional volatility and a lack of financial prudence, following a breakdown at a family gathering. It is recommended that her distributions be held in the Central Reserve to prevent reckless spending. She is currently seeking therapy for impulse control. I sat very still. November 14th, 2 years ago. I remembered that date. I had not had a breakdown. I had not been at a family gathering. I had been in Chicago for a logistics conference. I had spent the entire week negotiating shipping rates for a client. And the next one? I asked. Dated July of this year, Elise said, her voice barely a whisper. Beneficiary has requested we do not contact her with financial details as it triggers her anxiety. All communications should go through the parents to protect her mental health. I closed my eyes. It was masterful. It was evil, but it was masterful. They had not just stolen the money, they had framed the theft as an act of mercy. They were protecting me. They were saving poor, crazy Sarah from the burden of her own inheritance. I opened my eyes. Elise was watching me, her hand hovering over her mouse. Elise, I said, I have never been treated for impulse control. I have never asked to be removed from the mailing list. And I was in Chicago on November 14th. She stared at me. I have a job. I said, I have a mortgage. I have a credit score of 810. Does that sound like someone who needs to be protected from a bank statement? Elise swallowed. She looked at the screen, then at me. The cognitive dissonance was crashing down on her. The paperwork said I was unstable. The woman in front of her was the calmest person in the room. I don't know what to say. She said, "These were submitted with signatures." "Whose signatures?" I asked. "Your father's." She said, "And Dr. Arrington's." "Who is Dr. Arrington?" "He is listed as the family wellness consultant." She said, I almost laughed. We did not have a family wellness consultant. We had a family myth, and they were paying someone to validate it. "Elise," I said, "I need copies of the governing documents, the original trust deed, the amendments, and these summaries. I need all of it. I can't give you the summaries," she said quickly. "They are internal, but I can give you the trust deed. Please," I said. She stood up and went to a filing cabinet. She pulled out a thick folder. She hesitated before handing it to me. "Ms. Wood," she said, "if you take this, it is going to trigger a notification to the representative." "My father," I said. "Yes, let it trigger," I said. She handed me the folder. It felt heavy, like a weapon. I opened it on the desk. I flipped through the pages. The original deed was there. Grandfather's signature, shaky but bold, was on the final page. But as I flipped through the amendments, I noticed something. The page numbers jumped. It went from page 12 to page 15. "Where are pages 13 and 14? I asked. Elise looked. "Oh, that is odd. What was on those pages?" I asked. "I think..." She squinted at the index. "I think that was the section on independent review and removal of trustees." Of course it was. "Do you have the missing pages?" I asked. Elise typed into her computer. "They are listed as currently under revision in the digital archive." She said, "I can't print them. Under revision." I said, "Grandfather is dead." "Elise, you cannot revise a dead man's will without a court order. I am just telling you what the system says," she said. She looked terrified now. She realized she was standing in the middle of a crime scene. "It is okay," I said. I closed the folder. "This is enough for now." I stood up. I put the folder in my bag. "Elise," I said, "you have been very helpful." "Ms. Wood," she said. She stood up too. She looked at the door, ensuring it was closed. "There is something else," she whispered. I waited. "The restricted notes?" she said. "They don't match." "Match what?" "The tone." "Your grandfather?" "He left a memo. Years ago. It is not in the official file. It is in the old correspondence logs." "What did it say?" "It said, 'Sarah is the only one who understands the value of $1. If the others get greedy, she is the failsafe.'" I felt tears prick the back of my eyes. I fought them down. Grandfather had seen me. Even when I thought I was invisible, he had seen me. "Thank you." "Elise," I said. I walked out of the office. I walked past the receptionist. I took the elevator down 34 floors. When I stepped out onto the sidewalk, the city noise hit me like a physical blow. Sirens, traffic, the rush of people. I took a deep breath of exhaust fumes and cold air. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I stopped. I pulled it out. It was a text from my mother. "Proud of you for being responsible lately. Let's talk soon. Love, Mom." I stared at the screen. The timing was impeccable. I had just left the building. Had the notification triggered? Did she know I had the folder? "Proud of you for being responsible." It was a code. It meant, "Stay in line." It meant, "We are watching you. And as long as you act the way we want, we will throw you crumbs of affection." It felt gross. It felt like she had reached through the phone and touched my neck. I needed to get away. I walked 3 blocks to a coffee shop where I knew the barista. I ordered a black coffee and sat in the back corner. I called Maya. Maya had been my best friend since college. She was a lawyer, a pit bull in a skirt, and the only person outside the family who knew how twisted the Hawthorns really were. She answered on the first ring. "Tell me you didn't punch anyone," she said. "I didn't punch anyone." I said, "But I wanted to." I told her everything. The meeting, the behavioral summaries, the missing pages, the text from my mother. Behavioral summaries? Maya's voice rose an octave. Sarah, that is defamation. That is fraud. They are building a paper trail to have you declared incompetent. I know. I said, they said I had a breakdown 2 years ago. You were with me 2 years ago. Maya said, we were drinking margaritas in Chicago. Exactly. And the text? Maya asked. Read it to me again. Proud of you for being responsible lately. Maya let out a harsh laugh. That is classic conditioning. Sarah, it is the carrot. They sense you pulling away. So they give you a little praise. It is a leash. They are not proud of you. They are trying to reset the dynamic before you snap. It feels timed, I said, like she knew I was at the bank. She might know, Maya said. If your dad got an alert, he might have texted her to handle you. Good cop, bad cop. Dad controls the money. Mom controls the emotions. I looked at the folder on the table. They are scared. Maya, I said, they removed the pages about removing the trustee because they know they are in violation. Maya said, Sarah, you need to lock down your life. If they are willing to lie to a bank about your mental health, they are willing to do worse. I know. Check your credit. Maya said, check everything. If they have your social security number, and they do, they could be taking out loans in your name to create debt. They could be manufacturing a financial crisis to match the mental one. I will, I said, be careful. Sarah, these people aren't just your family anymore. They are the opposition. I hung up. I drank my coffee. It was bitter. I checked my email. Nothing. I checked my bank app. Normal. Then, my phone buzzed again. It was my sister. Hannah. Hannah was 5 years younger than me. She was the baby, the one who floated through life on a cloud of charm and Dad's credit card. We were not close, but we were not enemies, or so I thought. Hey sis, the text read. Long time no talk. How is work going? I stared at the blinking cursor. Hannah never asked about work. Hannah asked about clothes, or vacations, or borrowed money. Work is fine, I typed back. Why? Just checking in. She replied instantly. Mom mentioned you seemed super stressed at dinner. Just wanted to make sure you're not burning out. The logistics world sounds so intense. I felt a chill. Burning out. Intense. She was fishing. She was looking for keywords. If I admitted I was tired, if I admitted I was stressed, it would go into the next behavioral summary. Beneficiary admits to professional burnout. I am great. I typed. Best quarter yet. Actually, thinking about a promotion. How is the art studio? I waited. That's good, she replied. Just don't overdo it. We worry about you. Sometimes you take on too much. We worry about you. The royal we. She was in the group chat. She was likely reporting this conversation in real time. I am fine. Hannah, I typed. Gotta run. Meeting. I blocked my phone. I could not trust any of them. Not even Hannah. I went back to my apartment. I did not turn on the lights. I sat at my dining table and opened my laptop. I went to the credit bureau website. I paid the fee for an immediate, comprehensive report from all 3 agencies. I waited for the progress bar to load. My heart was hammering. What if there were loans? What if there were credit cards I didn't know about? The report generated. I scrolled through it. Green check marks. 0 derogatory marks. No unknown accounts. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. They hadn't touched my credit. Yet. But then, I looked closer at the inquiries section. There was a soft inquiry from Redwood Crest Trust Services last week. That was standard. But there was another one, a soft inquiry from Arrington Wellness Group. Dr. Arrington, the consultant. Why was a wellness consultant checking my credit score? To see if I was desperate, to see if I was failing. They were monitoring my financial health to see when I would break. I printed the report. I added it to the physical file I was building. The sun went down. The apartment filled with shadows. I felt like a spy in my own life. I was hungry, but I didn't want to eat. I wanted answers. I opened the trust deed again. I read every word of the pages I had. Article 4. Beneficiary rights. Each beneficiary is entitled to an equal share of the income generated by the corpus. Equal share. I did the math in the margin. If the fund was worth what I thought it was, around $50 million, my share of the income should have been roughly $200,000 a year. I had received $5,000. Where was the rest going? To the maintenance of the Aspen house? To Caleb's startup costs? To Aunt Linda's renovations? They were eating my future. They were literally eating it, wearing it, driving it. I worked until midnight. I built a spreadsheet of estimated distributions versus actuals. The gap was staggering. It was grand larceny disguised as family business. At 12:15, a notification popped up on my email. It was not a work email. It was not spam. It was from an address I did not recognize. Watcher1985@protonmail.com. The subject line was blank. I hovered over the mouse. Was it a virus? A phishing attempt? I opened it. The body of the email was 2 lines. They are planning to vote you out. The amendment is drafted. Do not confront them without proof. There was no signature. I stared at the screen. Watcher1985. Who was it? Someone inside. Someone who knew the plan. Was it Becca? She had looked guilty when she handed me the phone. Was it Elise? No. She wouldn't risk using a burner email from a corporate network. Was it Uncle Robert? He was weak. Maybe he was scared of what my father was doing. They are planning to vote you out. That explained the missing pages. They were rewriting the rules so they could legally expel a beneficiary. If they could prove I was incapacitated or detrimental to the trust, they could cut me off forever. They were not just hiding the money. They were preparing for an execution. I typed a reply. Who is this? I hit send. The delivery failed instantly. The account had been deleted. I sat back in my chair. The blue light of the screen washed over my face. I was alone. I was surrounded. And the clock was ticking. If they were drafting the amendment, I didn't have months. I had weeks. Maybe days. I needed the missing pages. I needed the full financials. And I needed to know who Watcher was. I closed the laptop. I walked to the window and looked out at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, my family was sleeping. Or maybe they were awake, texting in their secret room, planning the end of Sarah Wood. I touched the cold glass. You want me to be the villain? I whispered to the empty room. Fine, I will be the villain. I went to the kitchen and made a pot of coffee. I was not going to sleep tonight. I pulled out the timeline document I had started the night before. I added a new column. The strategy. Step 1. Secure the real documents. Step 2. Confirm the forgery. Step 3. Find the leak. I looked at the text from Hannah again. We worry about you. I picked up my phone. I typed a new message to Hannah. Thanks for checking in. Han, you are right. I am pretty stressed. I think I might take a few days off. Maybe go up to the lake house this weekend? Is anyone using it? I hit send. It was a test. The lake house was closed for repairs, according to my father last week. If Hannah said yes, I knew they were lying about the house. If she said no, I knew they were guarding it. The 3 dots appeared. Oh, bummer, she replied. Dad said the heating is broken. It's totally freezing up there. Maybe stay in the city and get a massage? My treat. Lies. I knew for a fact the heating wasn't broken because I saw the repair bill on the authorized list Elise had accidentally shown me. A bill for $5,000, paid to a company owned by my uncle's best friend. They were hoarding the properties too. I turned off my phone. I went back to the spreadsheet. I started highlighting every vendor that looked suspicious, every consultant, every repair service. The pattern emerged like a picture developing in a dark room. It wasn't just my family. It was a network. A network of enablers, fake vendors, and paid-off professionals. And at the center of it was my father, the man who taught me to ride a bike, the man who sat at the head of the table and carved the pear. He wasn't just a bad father. He was a criminal, and I was going to be the one to put the handcuffs on him. I wrote one final note in my notebook before the sun came up. Find the auditor. If Elise couldn't help me, and the family was stonewalling me, I needed a weapon they couldn't ignore. I needed an independent audit, but to get one, I needed to trigger the clause they were trying to hide. I had to find out what was on page 13, and I had a feeling I knew where to look. Grandfather's old study. In the main house. I hadn't been there in 6 months, but I still had a key, or at least, I hoped they hadn't changed the locks yet. Part 2 ended with the sun rising over a city that felt like a battlefield. I washed my face, put on fresh makeup, and prepared to go to war. The Sunday brunch was held at a bistro in the trendy part of the city, a place where the Eggs Benedict cost $30 and the mimosas were bottomless. My mother had organized it. She called it a spring reset, a chance for the family to reconnect after the somber mood of the remembrance dinner. I almost declined. My finger had hovered over the decline button on the digital invitation for a full minute, but I knew that absence was a form of communication. And I was not ready to communicate surrender. If I didn't show up, I was the erratic daughter who couldn't handle social obligations. If I did show up, I was the spy in the House of Hawthorne. I chose to be the spy. I arrived 5 minutes late, a calculated move to ensure everyone else was seated. They were gathered at a large round table near the patio doors, bathed in the sharp, clear light of late morning. My parents, Caleb, Aunt Linda, Uncle Robert, and my cousins, Becca and David. It was a tableau of American success. They looked healthy, wealthy, and cohesive. I slid into the empty chair between Becca and Uncle Robert. "Sorry I'm late," I said, unfolding my napkin. "Traffic on the bridge." My mother smiled. Tight and bright. We just sat down. "Darling, you look tired. Are you sleeping?" "I am sleeping fine." "Mom, just busy." We ordered. The conversation flowed in that effortless, superficial way that families master when they are avoiding the truth. They talked about the weather, about a neighbor's divorce, about the new landscaping at the club. I ate my fruit salad and watched. I was looking for the ghost in the machine. It happened 10 minutes into the meal. A soft, collective vibration ran through the table. It wasn't a sound. Exactly. It was a visual ripple. My father's phone, face up on the table, lit up with a notification. A split second later, Caleb's phone buzzed against the wood. Aunt Linda reached into her purse. Uncle Robert glanced at his watch, which was paired to his device. Becca, sitting next to me, had her phone in her lap. I saw the blue glow illuminate her chin. Everyone looked down. It was a synchronized bow, a moment of worship to the digital altar. Then, the reactions came. Caleb snorted, suppressing a laugh. He looked at Dad. Dad offered a small, grim smile, shaking his head slightly. Aunt Linda raised her eyebrows at Uncle Robert, mouthing a word I couldn't catch. I sat there, my phone dark and silent on the table. "What is so funny?" I asked. The table froze. The fluid connection between them snapped. They looked up, blinking, as if remembering I was there. "Oh, nothing," my mother said quickly. She placed her hand over her phone screen. "Just a news alert. You know how the news is these days. A news alert?" I repeated. That made everyone laugh at the exact same time. "Just a silly meme," Caleb said, shoveling eggs into his mouth, from a group chat with some guys. But Aunt Linda had looked at Uncle Robert. Becca had looked at the screen. They were not in a chat with some guys. They were in the room, the real family. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. It was the feeling of being a ghost. I was sitting 3 inches from my cousin, yet I was miles away. They were sharing a reality, a narrative, a joke, and I was the punchline, or worse, I was the target. I watched them for the rest of the meal. I saw the pattern. Dad would type something under the table. 3 seconds later, Aunt Linda would check her device. Uncle Robert would nod. It was a command center. They were coordinating the conversation. When the check came, my father grabbed it with performative generosity. "I have got it," he announced. "Put your wallets away." I stood up. "I need to use the restroom before we go." I walked toward the back of the restaurant. But I didn't go to the restroom. I waited near the hostess stand, watching the reflection in the large mirror that covered the back wall. I saw Becca stand up and linger by the table, while the others moved toward the exit. She was checking her lipstick and her phone camera. I doubled back, catching her alone, Becca was 29, the nice cousin. She was a kindergarten teacher, softer than the rest of them. Or at least she pretended to be. She had been the one to accidentally show me the notification. "Becca," I said. She jumped, dropping her lipstick back into her bag. "God. Sarah, you scared me. I am sorry." I said. I stood close to her. I didn't crowd her, but I didn't leave her an exit route either. "I need to ask you something, Becca, and I need you to tell me the truth." Her eyes darted to the door, looking for the others. "What?" "We are going to lose the valet spot." "Did I do something?" I asked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, is there a reason I'm being excluded?" Becca's face flushed a patchy red. "Excluded?" "Sarah, don't be dramatic. You were just at brunch. We invited you." "I am talking about the thread." "Becca." She went still. "I saw the notification on your phone at the remembrance dinner." I said, keeping my voice low and even. "The real family. And I saw everyone checking it today. I know it exists. I just want to know why." Becca looked down at her shoes. She twisted the strap of her purse. "It is not what you think," she mumbled. "Then what is it?" "It is just logistics," she said. "It is just easier to coordinate things without, without me?" "Without the debate," she said. She looked up, defensiveness creeping into her tone. "Look, Sarah, you can be intense. You ask a lot of questions. Uncle James, your dad, he just wanted a place where we could plan holidays and deal with the estate stuff without everything turning into a negotiation." "The estate stuff? So you are discussing the fund in there?" I asked. "Just boring stuff," she said. "Maintenance, fees. It is not a conspiracy." I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp, but I pushed it down. Anger was what they wanted. Anger was volatile. "Becca," I said, "if decisions are being made about the Hawthorne Fund, and I am a beneficiary, I have a legal right to be part of that conversation. It is not a debate. It is the law." She took a step back. "You are making it a big deal," she said. "This is exactly why you are not in the chat. Because you turn everything into a deposition." She pushed past me, walking fast toward the door. "I am just trying to keep the peace," she called back over her shoulder. I watched her go. "You turn everything into a deposition." That wasn't Becca talking. That was my father's voice coming out of her mouth. He had coached them. He had given them the talking points. Sarah is difficult. Sarah is litigious. Keep Sarah out for the sake of the peace. I walked out to the parking lot. My family was clustered around the valet stand, laughing. When they saw me, the laughter died down, replaced by those bright, plastic smiles. "See you soon, sweetie," my mother called out. I waved. I got in my car. I didn't go home. I drove to a park by the river, sat on a bench, and watched the water churn. My phone rang. It was a block number. Usually, I didn't answer block numbers, but my instincts were humming. "Hello? Ms. Wood?" "It is Elise, the assistant." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Elise," I said. I sat up straighter. "Are you okay? You sound like you're in a closet." "I am in the stairwell," she said. "I can't talk long. I shouldn't be calling you. Did you find something?" She took a jagged breath. "I went to the physical archives," she said. "In the basement. The digitized files. They have been curated, but the physical boxes from 20 years ago are still there." "And?" "I found a file note. From your grandfather. It was stapled to the back of a draft of the original trust agreement. Read it to me." I said, "It is handwritten," she said. "It says, 'The goal is unity, not uniformity. Equal opportunity for all 7 grandchildren. No gatekeeping. If the parents try to hoard control, the assets freeze.'" I closed my eyes. I could hear his voice. Rough, direct. "That sounds like him." I said, "There is more," Elise said. "I looked into the creation of the special committee, the one your father and uncle sit on. Yes, it does not exist in the original bylaws. Sarah, there is no provision for a committee. The trustee, Redwood Crest, is supposed to have sole discretion. So how did they get control?" I asked. Elise hesitated. They submitted a memorandum of understanding 2 weeks after the funeral, she said. It claimed that due to the complex nature of the family assets, a family advisory board was necessary. The senior partner at Redwood signed off on it. Who is the senior partner? Arthur Sterling. I didn't know the name, but I knew the type. An old boys' club friend of my father. Probably. So they invented a committee to bypass the trustee, I said, and then they used the committee to lock me out. Yes, Elise said. And Sarah? The restricted notes? The ones about your mental health? Yeah. They are using them to justify withholding your vote. They claim you are a silent beneficiary due to incapacity. That is why they don't need your signature. They are voting for you. My hand gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. They were voting for me. They were using my name to approve their own theft. Thank you. Elise, I said, you have no idea how much this helps. Be careful, she whispered. Mr. Sterling is asking who pulled the archive box. I have to go. The line went dead. I sat there for a long time. The wind coming off the river was cold. They had stolen my voice. That was the deepest violation. It wasn't just the money. They had stolen my agency. They had declared me an invalid so they could cannibalize my inheritance. I went home and opened my laptop. I was done with testing the waters. It was time to start the paper trail. I drafted a letter. I kept it cold, precise, and devoid of emotion. I addressed it to Arthur Sterling at Redwood Crest Trust Services, and I copied my father, my uncle, and the general email for the trust. Dear Mr. Sterling, pursuant to Article 4 of the Hawthorne Family Growth Fund Declaration of Trust, I am formally requesting a complete accounting of all distributions, loans, and administrative fees incurred over the last 36 months. Furthermore, I request immediate documentation regarding the establishment and authority of the so-called Special Committee, as well as the evidentiary basis for any restricted status applied to my beneficiary profile. Please provide these documents within 5 business days. Sincerely, Sarah Wood. I hit send. It was a declaration of war. The response did not take 5 business days. It took 3 hours. My phone rang. It was my father. Sarah. He said, no greeting, no pleasantries. Hello, Dad. I just got a very confusing email from Arthur Sterling's office. He said, his voice was not angry, it was hurt. It sounded weary. Like he was dealing with a toddler who had drawn on the walls. It shouldn't be confusing. I said, it is a standard request for information. He sighed. A long, heavy exhale. Sarah, why are you doing this? We are family. You are sending formal legal demands to a man I have known for 30 years. It is embarrassing. I am sorry you feel embarrassed, Dad, but I have not received a statement in 3 years. I found out there is a committee I was never told about. I am just doing my due diligence. Due diligence, he repeated, tasting the words like they were sour milk. That is a very cold way to treat your legacy. We are trying to protect the fund. Sarah, the market is unstable. We are working night and day to make sure there is something left for you kids, and you are throwing wrenches in the gears. I am not throwing wrenches, I said. I am asking for a flashlight. I want to see you. He said, not at the house. Let's meet for coffee. Just the 2 of us. No lawyers, no emails. Just a father and daughter talking. I hesitated. I knew it was a trap, but I also knew I needed to look him in the eye. I needed to see if he could lie to my face when I knew what I knew. Okay, I said. The coffee shop on 4th. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. Fine, he said. And Sarah? Please watch your tone when we meet. It affects how people perceive you. It affects outcomes. He hung up. It affects outcomes. A threat wrapped in advice. I slept poorly that night. I dreamed I was trapped in a glass box, screaming, while my family ate dinner on the other side, unable to hear me. The coffee shop was quiet at 8 in the morning. My father was already there. He was wearing his golf casual attire, a polo shirt and a windbreaker. He looked like the picture of a retired executive. He had ordered me a chai latte, my drink from high school. Here, he said, sliding the cup toward me as I sat down. I remember you used to love these. Thank you, I said. I didn't drink it. He leaned back, crossing his arms. He looked at me with a mixture of disappointment and pity. Your mother is very upset. Sarah, he said, she cried last night. She thinks she has failed you. I felt the familiar twist of guilt, the button they had installed in my childhood. I disconnected the wire. Mom's feelings are not the topic. Dad, the topic is the fund. He shook his head. It is all connected. Sarah, you don't see that. You compartmentalize everything. You treat the family like a corporation. You treated it like a corporation when you formed a special committee and excluded me. I said. He waved his hand dismissively. That was a formality. We needed a steering group. You were busy. You were starting your career. We didn't want to burden you. You didn't want to burden me with a vote? I asked. Or you didn't want me to vote? He leaned in, his eyes hardening. You are not equipped to make these decisions. Sarah, why? I asked. Because I am unstable? Because I have impulse control issues? He didn't flinch. He didn't deny it. We have all seen the signs, he said softly. The mood swings, the withdrawal. You didn't come home for Easter last year. I had the flu. Dad, you isolated yourself, he corrected. And now this paranoia, thinking we are plotting against you. It is classic projection. I stared at him. It was gaslighting of the highest order. He was using my reaction to his abuse as proof that I deserved the abuse. I know about the group chat. Dad, I said, I know about the real family thread. He didn't look surprised. He looked weary. It is just a logistics thread. Sarah, we didn't add you because we knew you would overanalyze everything, like you are doing now. I leaned forward. I know about the restricted notes. I said, I know you told Redwood Crest I'm incapacitated. For a second, his mask slipped. His eyes widened. He hadn't expected me to know that. We had to protect the assets, he said. His voice was sharper now. From whom? From me? From your choices, he snapped. The words hung in the air. Your choices. I sat back. There it was. What choices? Dad? I asked quietly. He looked away, out the window. His jaw worked. You know what choices. You turned down the job at Uncle Robert's firm. You move to the city. You date whoever you want. You don't listen. Sarah, you have never listened. You think you are smarter than everyone else. You think you can just go your own way and still reap the rewards of what we built. What grandfather built. I corrected. It is the same thing, he hissed. He lowered his voice. Looking around the shop. We are the stewards. And you are a risk. You are not a team player. You never have been. You don't have the gratitude that is required. Gratitude. I realized then what this was. It wasn't about financial competence. It wasn't about mental health. It was a moral court. I had been put on trial for the crime of being myself. I hadn't married the son of his golf buddy. I hadn't taken the easy job at the family firm. I had built a life outside their sphere of influence, and that made me dangerous. They couldn't control me with approval. So they were controlling me with poverty. So that is it, I said. You are cutting me out because I am not obedient. We are not cutting you out, he said, regaining his composure. We are managing your access. For your own good, until you show some maturity, until you come back to the fold. And if I don't, he shrugged, then the committee will continue to act in your best interest. He stood up. He looked down at me. Drop the audit request. Sarah, it will only humiliate you. We have the doctor's notes. We have the history. If you drag this into the light, you are the one who will look crazy. He walked out. I sat there with the cold chai latte. I was shaking, not with fear, but with a terrible, cold rage. Your choices. He was right about one thing. I had made choices, and I was about to make a few more. I left the coffee shop and drove to my apartment. I didn't go to work. I called in sick. I needed to verify something. My father had said they were protecting the fund. He had said the market was unstable. He pleaded poverty to justify the secrecy, but something didn't add up. I pulled out my laptop and opened the folder of photos I had downloaded from social media. I was not connected to them, but I could view their public profiles, and I could view the profiles of their friends who tagged them. I looked at Aunt Linda's profile. 3 months ago. Renovation complete. So in love with my new chef's kitchen. I zoomed in. Wolf range, sub-zero fridge, marble countertops. That was a $100,000 kitchen. I looked at Uncle Robert. 6 weeks ago. New toy for the summer. A photo of a vintage Porsche 911. I looked up the value. $80,000, minimum. I looked at my parents. Last month. First class to Paris. Anniversary trip. I did the math on a notepad. Kitchen, $100,000. Car, $80,000. Trip, $20,000. Caleb's new apartment deposit, probably $10,000. That was over $200,000 in discretionary spending in the last quarter alone. If the fund was restructuring, if the market was volatile, where was the cash coming from? The fund wasn't losing value. They were draining it. They were treating the Hawthorne Family Growth Fund like a personal piggy bank. They were approving loans and distributions for themselves, while telling me there was a freeze, and the discrepancy was the key. If I could prove that the fund's reported value to me was different from the actual withdrawals they were making. I had them on fraud. I looked at the photos again. Aunt Linda's kitchen renovation. I zoomed in on the photo, on the counter. There was a set of blueprints rolled up. I squinted. I could just make out the logo on the corner of the paper. Miller Design Group. I knew that name. It was the same contractor my father used for his office buildings. I went to the State Licensing Board website. I searched for Miller Design Group. The owner was listed as Thomas Miller. Thomas Miller was Uncle Robert's brother-in-law. I searched for the other vendors, the consultants, listed on the partial sheet Elise had given me. Arrington Wellness Group, registered agent, Janet Arrington. My mother's college roommate, Apex Strategic Partners, registered agent, Caleb Hawthorne. I sat back, stunned. They weren't just spending the money. They were laundering it. They were paying themselves through shell companies. They were writing checks to their friends and their own LLCs for services rendered and calling it trust expenses. It was so much worse than I thought. It wasn't just exclusion, it was embezzlement. I picked up my phone. I needed to call Elise again. I needed to know if she could see the invoices. But before I could dial, a notification popped up. It was an email from Watcher 1985. They know you requested the docs. They are moving the money. Tonight, my stomach dropped. Moving the money, if they liquidated the accounts and moved the cash offshore, or into a different trust structure, it would be gone. I would be chasing ghosts for the rest of my life. I looked at the clock. It was 2 p.m. I had to stop them. But I couldn't stop them alone. I needed an injunction. I needed a lawyer. And I needed one fast. I called Maya. Maya, I said, drop everything. What is it? I have proof of embezzlement, I said. And I think they are about to flee the jurisdiction with the assets. I am on my way, she said. I hung up. I looked at the whiteboard where I had written the strategy. I erased find the auditor. I wrote in big red letters, freeze the accounts. The war was no longer cold. It was burning down the house. The courier arrived at my apartment building at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. The box was heavy, cardboard reinforced with packing tape, stamped with the Redwood Crest Trust Services logo. I signed for it with a hand that trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of a hunter who has finally cornered the prey. I carried the box to my dining table, pushed aside the remnants of my dinner, and sliced the tape with a kitchen knife. Inside were 3 binders, each 3 inches thick. They smelled of toner and fresh plastic. I spent the next 6 hours dissecting the corpse of my family's integrity. At first glance, the documents looked impressive. There were balance sheets, distribution schedules, and meeting minutes. But as I cross-referenced the pages with the notes I had made from my conversation with Elise, the facade began to crack. I started with the beneficiary consent forms. There was a document dated 18 months ago, authorizing the liquidation of a municipal bond portfolio to fund diversified real estate assets. At the bottom of the page were 7 signatures. I looked at my own signature. It was a perfect loop, the S crossing the A in a specific way I had used in high school, but had abandoned in my 20s. I grabbed a magnifying glass, a prop I had bought ironically years ago that was now a necessity. I held it over the signature. The edges of the ink were pixelated. It wasn't a wet signature, it was a scan, and not just any scan. It was identical, down to the microscopic, jagged edge of the pen stroke, to the signature on my driver's license application from 10 years ago. I flipped to the next document, another authorization, another identical signature. They hadn't even bothered to vary the forgery. They had just copy-pasted me into compliance. Then I looked at the attachments. The cover letter referenced Attachment B, Independent Valuation of the Aspen Property. I turned to the tab marked B. It was a generic printout of real estate trends in Colorado, downloaded from a public real estate website. There was no valuation. There was no appraisal. Just a graph showing that houses in Aspen were expensive. I turned to Attachment D, Committee Minutes Regarding Educational Loans. The page was a summary. The committee met on June 4th to discuss educational needs. All requests approved. June 4th was a Sunday. Redwood Crest was closed on Sundays. My father played golf on Sundays. I pulled out my phone and checked my photo archives. On June 4th of that year, my parents were at a wedding in Italy. I had the pictures to prove it. They were sloppy. They were arrogant. They were so used to no one checking their math that they had built a fortress out of cardboard. My phone rang. It was a restricted number. I picked up immediately. "Elise?" I asked. "Miss Wood," the voice whispered. It was her. She sounded breathless, like she was walking fast. "I got the package." I said, "It is a joke. The signatures are digital pastes. The dates are wrong." "I know," she said. "I tried to flag it to compliance before it went out. But Mr. Sterling overrode me. He said the family context made the irregularities acceptable." "Elise, this is fraud. Ms. Wood, listen to me," she interrupted. "You can't just accuse them of fraud. If you do, they will bury you in litigation for 5 years. They will drain the fund paying for their own defense. Then what do I do? You need to trigger the audit," she said, "but not just any audit. You need to use the grandfather clause." "The what?" "Article 9, Section C," she said. "It is on the page they tried to hide from you. I managed to slip a copy of the unredacted deed into the back pocket of the second binder. Did you find it?" I frantically flipped open the second binder. I shook it. A single, folded sheet of yellowed paper fell out. I unfolded it. Article 9, Accountability. In the event that any single beneficiary suspects mismanagement, they may demand an independent forensic audit. This demand must be submitted in writing, via certified mail, citing this specific article, and must designate an auditor from the approved list of impartial firms. I read it twice. Any single beneficiary. I whispered, "It bypasses the committee." Elise said, "It bypasses the trustee. Once you file that letter, the bank is legally frozen. They cannot move a penny until the audit is complete." "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I wanted to keep my job," she said, her voice cracking. "But today, I saw a transfer request." "What kind of request?" "They are trying to move the liquidity. Sarah, to a shelf company in the Cayman Islands. They are calling it International Diversification." "When?" "Friday," she said. "You have 48 hours. I will write the letter tonight." I said, "Send it certified," she said. "And Sarah?" "Watch your back. Mr. Sterling called your father the moment the courier left. They know you have the documents." The line went dead. I looked at the yellow paper. It was my weapon. But before I could even draft the header, the counteroffensive began. It started with Aunt Linda. My phone lit up with her name. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, a text. "Sarah, honey, I just heard from your mom. She says you are sounding very erratic. We are all so worried about you. Please pick up." Then my cousin David. "Hey Sarah, heard you are going through a rough patch. Do you need me to come over? We can just hang out. No pressure." then a number I didn't recognize. I answered it, thinking it might be Maya or Elise. Hello? Hi, this is Dr. Evans's office, a cheerful voice said. We received a referral for a Sarah Wood. We have an opening for an emergency crisis evaluation tomorrow at 10. I froze. Who referred me? Your mother, the receptionist said. She indicated you were spiraling and might be a danger to yourself. I hung up. My hands were shaking. They were building the narrative in real time. If I filed the audit request, they would present these calls, these referrals. As proof that I was mentally unstable, they would say the audit was just another symptom of my paranoia. I turned off my phone. I needed to focus. I sat at my laptop. I opened a fresh document. 2. Redwood Crest Trust Services. Attention, Compliance Department. Regarding formal demand for independent forensic audit pursuant to Article 9. Section C. I wrote with the precision of a surgeon. I cited the clause. I listed the irregularities I had found in the last hour. The scanned signatures. The impossible dates. The missing valuations. I kept the emotion out of it. No adjectives, no accusations of malice, just facts. Fact. Signature on document A is identical pixel for pixel to signature on document B. Fact. Meeting minutes dated June 4th. Place the committee in a location where the committee members were physically absent. I finished the draft at 2 a.m. I printed it. I signed it with a wet blue pen. I slept for 3 hours, fully dressed on top of my covers. The next morning, the war followed me to work. I walked into the logistics firm where I had worked for 5 years. I loved this job. It was orderly. It was logical. It was the one place where I was judged solely on my performance. As I passed the reception desk, the receptionist didn't smile at me. She looked down. My badge worked, but the green light seemed to mock me. I walked to my cubicle. My manager, Marcus, was standing there. Marcus was a good man, a soft-spoken guy who liked spreadsheets as much as I did. He looked pale. Sarah, he said, can we talk in the conference room? My stomach dropped. Sure, Marcus. We walked into the glass-walled room. He closed the door and pulled the blinds. That was bad. Sit down. Sarah. I sat. Marcus clasped his hands on the table. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Sarah. You know we value you here. You are one of our best analysts. But, I asked, we received a communication this morning to the general HR tip line. About what? Marcus slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a printout of an email. Subject: Concern regarding employee Sarah Wood. To whom it may concern, I am writing to you as a concerned family member. Sarah Wood is currently undergoing a severe mental health crisis. She has been exhibiting signs of paranoia, delusion, and financial recklessness. We are currently seeking involuntary commitment for her safety. We felt it was our duty to inform you, as she handles sensitive financial data. She may not be fit to manage company accounts at this time. Please, help us help her. It was unsigned. I read it twice. The room spun. They had crossed the line. They were trying to destroy my livelihood. If I lost my job, I lost my income. If I lost my income, I couldn't pay for a lawyer. Sarah? Marcus asked gently. Is there any truth to this? I looked up at him. I could have cried. I could have screamed. That is what they wanted. They wanted the breakdown. I took a deep breath. I channeled the cold, hard steel of the skyscrapers outside. Marcus, I said, I want you to look at the timestamp on this email. He looked. 7:30 this morning. I want you to look at my performance review from last week. I continued. Did you note any paranoia? Any errors in my data? No. He said, you were perfect. This email, I said, tapping the paper, is a retaliatory tactic. I am currently in the process of auditing a family trust fund where I have uncovered significant embezzlement. My family is attempting to discredit me to prevent me from testifying. Marcus's eyes went wide. Embezzlement? Yes, and the fact that they sent this to you proves they are desperate. I opened my bag. I pulled out the binder I had brought with me, the one with the forged signatures. I'm not asking you to get involved in my family legal battle, Marcus, but I am asking you to look at this. I opened the binder to the page with the pixelated signatures. This is what I found yesterday. I said, "This is why they are calling me crazy, because I caught them." Marcus looked at the forgery. He was a logistics guy. He knew detail. "That is a bad Photoshop," he muttered. "Exactly." I said, I pulled out a prepared memo I had written on the subway. To Human Resources. From Sarah Wood. Harassment and false reporting. I am currently the plaintiff in a financial dispute involving high net worth family assets. Opposing parties have threatened to damage my professional reputation if I proceed with legal action. The anonymous communication received by this office is a direct fulfillment of that threat. I am submitting this memo to affirm my fitness for duty and to request that any further external communications regarding my mental health be treated as harassment. I handed it to Marcus. I am filing this with HR. I said, I am fine. Marcus, I am not spiraling. I am fighting. Marcus looked from the memo to me. A slow smile spread across his face. Okay, he said. Okay. Sarah, I will walk this down to HR myself, and I will tell them to block that email address. Thank you. Marcus, I walked back to my desk. I was shaking, but I was still standing. At lunch, I went to the post office. I mailed the audit demand to Redwood Crest. Certified mail. Return receipt requested. I watched the clerk stamp it. Thump, thump. The sound of a gavel. When I got back to my apartment that evening, Caleb was waiting for me. He was sitting on the steps of my building, wearing his expensive coat and looking like a lost child. Sarah, he said, standing up. I didn't stop. I walked past him to the door. Go away. Caleb, Sarah, please. Dad sent me. I unlocked the door. I turned to look at him. Dad sent you. I repeated. Of course he did. He never does his own dirty work. Can I come in? It is freezing. 5 minutes. I said. He followed me up the stairs. He stood in my living room, looking around like he had never seen it before. Nice place, he said. Cut the crap. Caleb, why are you here? He sighed and sat on the edge of my sofa. He rubbed his face. They are holding a vote tomorrow, he said. A vote for what? To invoke the incapacity clause. I laughed. A dry, harsh sound. Based on what? The opinion of Mom's college roommate? Based on everything. Sarah, the way you stormed out of brunch, the letters you are writing, the HR thing. You know about the HR thing? I asked. He looked down. I heard them talking about it. Did you write it? No. Sarah. God, no. But you knew about it. I said, you knew they were trying to get me fired, and you didn't warn me. I couldn't, he said. Dad took my phone. He said we had to present a united front. You are a coward. Caleb, I am not a coward, he shouted, standing up. I am trying to survive. Do you have any idea what it is like living in that house? Dad is losing his mind. He is screaming at everyone. He says you are going to ruin us. He says if the audit happens, the IRS gets involved. And if the IRS gets involved... He stopped. What? Caleb? If the IRS gets involved, what happens? He looked at me, his eyes wide with fear. We go to jail. Sarah, not just Dad, all of us. Why all of you? Because we all signed the distribution checks, he whispered. I stared at him. You signed? He nodded. Dad brought me the papers. He said it was tax optimization. I didn't read them. Sarah, I just signed. I wanted a new car. I wanted the apartment. I didn't ask questions. So you stole from me. I said, I didn't know it was stealing. I thought it was just shuffling. I walked over to the window. I looked out. So what is the message? Caleb, why did he send you? He wants you to withdraw the request. Caleb said. He says if you withdraw it, he will reinstate your full share. He will pay you out. Cash, $500,000. Tomorrow, $500,000. I repeated, the fund is worth $50 million. Caleb, my share is $7 million. He can't give you $7 million. Caleb said. The liquidity isn't there. Where is it? It is in the houses, he said. It is in the shell companies. It is gone. I turned back to him. Get out. Sarah, please, take the deal. If you don't, they are going to destroy you. They have a lawyer drafting a petition for conservatorship. They are going to say you are a danger to yourself. They will lock you up. Sarah, get out! I screamed. He flinched. He walked to the door. He paused, his hand on the knob. I just didn't want drama. Sarah, he said softly, I just wanted everyone to get along. You didn't want drama. I said, you wanted my money. He left. I locked the door. I deadbolted it. I put a chair under the handle. I checked my email. A notification from the USPS. Item delivered. Redwood Crest had the letter. I sat on the floor, my back against the wall. I waited. At 4:55 p.m., 5 minutes before the close of business, my phone rang. It was a local number. Ms. Wood? A man's voice said. This is Arthur Sterling. I didn't speak. I hit the record button on my other phone. Mr. Sterling, I said, we received your demand. He said, the word sounded like a curse. I trust you will be complying with Article 9? I asked. We are reviewing the validity of the request, he said. However, I must inform you that the family representative has issued a directive to transfer the custodial accounts to a new institution effective immediately. You can't do that, I said. The moment you received my letter, the assets were frozen. If you move a single dime, Mr. Sterling, you are committing a federal crime, and since I'm recording this call, you will be doing it knowingly. There was a silence on the line, a long, heavy silence. Ms. Wood, he said, his voice dropping the professional veneer. You are playing a very dangerous game. Your father is a powerful man. My father is a thief. Mr. Sterling, and it looks like you are his getaway driver. I have copied the State Attorney General on my letter. Did you miss that, CC? I hadn't copied the Attorney General, but he didn't know that. Another silence. We will pause the transfer pending legal review, he said. Good choice. I hung up. I let out a breath that felt like it had been held for a week. I had stopped the transfer. I had frozen the money, but I had also backed a pack of wolves into a corner. The sun went down. The apartment got dark. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't want to be a silhouette in the window. At 11 o'clock, my phone buzzed. New voicemail. It was my mother. I didn't want to listen to it. I knew what it would be, but I had to. It was evidence. I pressed play. Sarah? Her voice was thick. She had been crying, or drinking, or both. Sarah, I don't understand. I really don't. A sob. We gave you everything. We paid for your school. We bought you your first car. We loved you. Why are you doing this to us? Why do you hate us so much? She took a ragged breath. Your father. He is sitting in the dark. He is broken. Sarah, you broke him. Over money? Is money that important to you? More important than family? Please, baby, just stop. The silence that followed the arrival of the forensic auditors was not peaceful. It was the heavy, suffocating stillness of a held breath. For 3 days, I heard nothing. No texts from my mother. No threats from my father. No pleading visits from Caleb. The audit team, a group of 4 serious men and women from a firm called Sterling Vance, had descended on the Redwood Crest offices, seizing servers and freezing transactions. I went to work. I sat at my desk. I approved shipping manifests. I tried to exist in the world as if my entire history wasn't being dismantled across town. Then, on a Thursday morning, the gaslighting shifted from private whispers to administrative warfare. I received an email with the subject line, Minutes from Family Harmony Strategy Meeting. Final recap. I frowned. There had been no meeting. I opened the attachment. It was a polished PDF, complete with the family crest my father had commissioned 10 years ago, a pretension that always made me cringe. Date, October 24th. Attendees, James Wood, Catherine Wood, Robert Hawthorne, Linda Hawthorne, Caleb Wood, Rebecca Hawthorne, David Hawthorne. Absent, Sarah Wood. Invited but declined. I stared at the words, invited but declined. I read the minutes. Item 1. Discussion regarding Sarah's mental health support. The family unanimously agrees to set aside funds for specialized care, despite Sarah's refusal to engage in dialogue. Item 2. Restructuring of the trust to protect the corpus from volatile beneficiary actions. They were creating a history that never happened. They knew the auditor would see this. They were planting evidence in the corporate record to make me look like a defiant, unstable obstructionist who refused to come to the table. I checked my email archives, my text messages, my call logs. There was no invitation, not a single digital footprint of a request for me to attend this meeting. I felt a surge of panic, hot and prickly. How do you prove a negative? How do you prove you weren't invited to a party that never really existed? I forwarded the email to my attorney, a man named Marcus Thorne, whom I had retained 48 hours ago. He was expensive, sharp, and specialized in high-conflict probate. Add it to the pile, was his reply. They are flailing, but flailing animals are dangerous. That weekend, I needed to get out of my head. I needed to do something normal. My cousin Becca texted me on Saturday morning. It was brief, breezy, and completely at odds with the legal war we were in. Hey, I am cleaning out the garage and found a box of old books from Grandpa's study. Do you want them? I know you loved his first editions. I am heading out to yoga, but I can leave the key under the mat if you want to swing by. It was a peace offering, or a trap, or maybe, just maybe. Becca was too dim to realize the magnitude of what was happening. Becca had always been the one who floated above the conflict, protected by her own oblivion. I wanted those books. Grandfather had a collection of Steinbeck that I had coveted since I was 12. I drove to Becca's condo. It was a sleek, modern place in the Arts District, bought with loan money I now knew was stolen from my future. I found the key. I let myself in. The condo was quiet. The box of books was by the door. Exactly as promised. I knelt down and ran my fingers over the spine of East of Eden. The smell of old paper brought tears to my eyes. It smelled like the library in the old house, before the renovations, before the committees, before the greed. I stood up to leave. As I did, I noticed a tablet sitting on the kitchen island. It was an old iPad, cracked at the corner, plugged into a wall charger. It wasn't her primary device. Becca was obsessed with having the latest tech. This was likely a kitchen screen, used for recipes or Spotify. The screen was dark, but as I set my keys down on the counter, the vibration of the metal hitting the stone woke it up. A banner notification was stuck on the lock screen, iCloud synchronization complete, and below that, a cascade of message previews. My heart hammered against my ribs. Becca must have logged into her new phone, and the family group chat had auto-synced to this old device, pulling down the cached history. I shouldn't look. It was an invasion of privacy. It was illegal. I looked. The chat was named The Real Family. I swiped the screen. It wasn't password protected. Becca, in her infinite carelessness, hadn't set a passcode for her kitchen screen. I opened the app. I didn't scroll to the bottom. I scrolled up. I went back to the months leading up to the audit request. August 12th. Dad, Sarah is asking about the quarterly reports again. She is like a dog with a bone. Uncle Robert, stall her. Tell her the accountants are switching software. Mom, I am worried she is going to talk to the firm directly. She is so intense lately. Maybe we need to remind everyone how unstable she was after the breakup last year. I gripped the edge of the counter. The breakup they were referring to was a mutual separation from a boyfriend of 3 months. I had been sad for a week. I hadn't been unstable. I scrolled down. September 15th. Caleb, I need another $10,000 for the loft conversion. Can we run it through Apex? Dad, careful. We are close to the limit for the quarter. If we go over, it triggers a review. Aunt Linda, just label it consulting fees. No one checks. October 1st. Becca, she's looking at me weird at dinner. Do you think she knows? Dad, she doesn't know anything. She is not smart enough to figure out the shell structure. Just keep smiling. Mom, We need to cut Sarah out before she asks the wrong question. If she gets an audit, we are exposed. All of us. Uncle Robert. If she triggers an audit, we bury her. We use the medical file. We paint her as a pariah. The room spun. She is not smart enough. We bury her. This wasn't just a family venting. This was a conspiracy. It was premeditated malice. They weren't just protecting themselves. They were actively hunting me. I pulled out my phone. I didn't forward the messages. That would leave a digital trail on the iPad. Instead, I took photos of the screen. I photographed everything. The dates, the names, the specific admission of guilt regarding the shell structure, the threat to bury me. I took 40 pictures. Then I carefully wiped the screen of the iPad with my sleeve, placed it back exactly where it was, picked up the box of books, and walked out. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, unable to drive. I was shaking so hard the keys rattled in the ignition. I had the smoking gun, but I couldn't fire it yet. If I confronted them now, they would claim the messages were taken out of context. They would claim I hacked the device. They would pivot. I needed to give this to the professionals. I drove straight to Marcus Thorne's office. It was Saturday, but he had given me his cell number. I met him and the lead auditor, a woman named Eleanor Vance, in a conference room that smelled of lemon polish. I laid my phone on the table. "Look," I said. Eleanor scrolled through the photos. Her face, usually a mask of professional detachment, tightened. "This is intent," she said softly. "If she gets an audit, we are exposed. That is consciousness of guilt. And this," Marcus said, pointing to the screen, "label it consulting fees. That is conspiracy to commit fraud." "What do we do?" I asked. "Do I send this to them? Do I tell my father I know?" "No," Marcus said sharply. "You tell them nothing. You let them think they are winning. You let them think you are scared and isolated. When they think they are safe, they get sloppy." Eleanor looked up. "This confirms what we found in the preliminary data yesterday," she said. "What did you find?" "Structuring," she said. "It is a banking term. We found dozens of transfers to entities like Blue Heron Holdings and Apex Strategic Partners. Every single transfer was for $9,900. Why that amount? Because $10,000 is the threshold for mandatory federal reporting. Eleanor explained. If you transfer $10,000, the bank has to file a currency transaction report with the Treasury. If you transfer $9,900, it flies under the radar. Unless you do it 50 times, Marcus added. Then it is called structuring, and it is a felony. I sat back. My father, my uncle, felons, they aren't just stealing from the trust, Eleanor said. They are evading taxes. They are hiding income. Sarah, this isn't a civil dispute anymore. This is criminal. I felt a wave of nausea. What happens next? I asked. We finish the audit, Eleanor said. We map every dollar. And then, we present it to the Board of Trustees at Redwood Crest. And my family? They will try to break you before that happens, Marcus said. They know the walls are closing in. Expect them to get ugly. He was right. 2 days later, Elise called me. She sounded different this time. Stronger, but also more urgent. Sarah, she said, I need to see you. Outside the office. We met in a park 3 blocks from the tower. Elise was wearing a trench coat, looking over her shoulder like a character in a spy movie. She handed me a photocopy of a document. I found it. She said, Found what? The dead man's switch. She said, I looked at the paper. It was a letter, handwritten on grandfather's personal stationery, dated 3 weeks before he died, to the board of Redwood Crest. I am an old man, and I know my children. They are hungry, and they are proud. I fear that once I'm gone, they will try to consolidate power. They will try to silence the dissenting voices. Let this letter serve as an absolute instruction. If any beneficiary is excluded from information, or if any attempt is made to alter the distribution schedule without unanimous consent, the trust is to be immediately frozen. The discretion of the family representative is revoked. The assets are to be returned to the direct control of the trustee until a forensic accounting is complete. Protect Sarah. She is the conscience of this family. I read the last line 3 times. Protect Sarah. He knew. I whispered. He knew. Elise said, he filed this in a sealed envelope marked, to be opened only in the event of a dispute. Mr. Sterling tried to shred it. He tried to shred it? I walked in on him. Elise said, he had the file open. The shredder was running. I told him if he shredded it, I would call the FBI. I looked at this young woman, this assistant who barely made enough to pay rent in this city, standing up to a multimillionaire partner. Elise, I said, thank you. You have to use it. Sarah, she said, the hearing is scheduled for Friday. I know. The next night, the social escalation reached its peak. There was a charity gala for the City Arts Foundation. My family had bought a table years ago. It was the event of the season, the place where the Hawthorne name was polished and displayed. I hadn't planned to go, but Marcus told me I had to. If you hide, you look guilty, he said. Go. Wear a red dress. Stand tall. So I went. I wore a crimson gown that I couldn't really afford. I had my hair blown out. I walked into the ballroom with my head high. Even though my legs felt like water, I saw them immediately. They were holding court near the ice sculpture. My father was laughing, a champagne flute in his hand. My mother was touching the arm of the mayor. They looked perfect. They looked untouchable. Then they saw me. The laughter didn't stop, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. My mother leaned into my father and whispered something. He stiffened, but he didn't turn. It was Aunt Linda who broke rank. She detached herself from the group and glided toward me. She was wearing gold, dripping in diamonds that I now knew were bought with my money. She didn't yell. She didn't cause a scene. She smiled. A wide, terrifying smile that showed all her teeth. Sarah, she cooed, loud enough for the people nearby to hear. We didn't think you were up for a night out. Considering what? Aunt Linda? I asked, my voice steady. She stepped closer. She invaded my personal space, bringing with her the scent of expensive gardenias and gin. She leaned in to kiss my cheek, and as she did, she hissed in my ear, you always wanted attention, didn't you? Even when you were little, you couldn't stand it if the sun wasn't shining on you. She pulled back, her hands gripping my upper arms hard enough to bruise. Well, you are going to get it, she whispered, her eyes dead and cold. You are going to get all the attention you want, and when we are done with you, no one in this city will hire you to walk a dog, let alone manage a portfolio. She patted my cheek. Enjoy the party. Darling, she said aloud. Try not to drink too much. She walked away. I stood there. The room was spinning. The music, a string quartet playing Mozart, sounded like a siren. My hands started to shake. I couldn't stop them. I clenched them into fists at my sides. A wave of nausea rolled over me, hot and sour. I felt the bile rise in my throat. This was the quiet cruelty. It wasn't a punch to the face. It was a whisper in a ballroom. It was the knowledge that these people, who shared my DNA, wanted to obliterate me. I wanted to run. I wanted to flee to the bathroom and vomit. Stand tall, Marcus had said. I took a deep breath. I forced my hands to unclench. I walked to the bar. Sparkling water with lime. Please, I said to the bartender. I stood there for an hour. I smiled at people I knew. I didn't look at my family. I let them see me. I let them see that I was still standing. The next morning, the summons arrived. It wasn't a court summons. It was an internal notification from the Board of Redwood Crest Trust Services. Notice of Beneficiary Review Hearing. Date, Friday, November 2nd. Time, 9 a.m. Agenda, review of allegations regarding mismanagement and counterclaim regarding beneficiary fitness. Counterclaim regarding beneficiary fitness. They were going to put me on trial. I called Marcus. It is happening. I said, Good, he said. We are ready. Are we? Sarah, he said. They are going to bring mud. They are going to bring lies. We are going to bring math. Math wins. I spent the next 3 days in a war room. Me, Marcus, Eleanor, and Elise, whom we had subpoenaed as a witness. We built the packet. It wasn't a narrative. It was a timeline. Exhibit A, the grandfather's letter, the intent. Exhibit B, the false meeting minutes, the cover-up. Exhibit C, the structuring log, the crime. Exhibit D, the chat logs, the malice. Exhibit E, the HR memo, the harassment. We printed it on heavy bond paper. We bound it in black folders. On Thursday night, the night before the hearing, I sat on my floor surrounded by the documents. My phone pinged. It was a text from Caleb. I am sorry. Sarah, I really am. But I have to testify. Dad says if I don't, he will cut me off too. I looked at the screen. I didn't reply. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt a strange, hollow calm. I realized then that I wasn't fighting for the money anymore. The $7 million felt abstract. I was fighting for the truth. I was fighting to prove that I wasn't crazy. I was fighting to prove that I existed. I picked up the black folder. It weighed 5 pounds. It was the heaviest thing I had ever carried. I went to bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark and rehearsed my opening statement. I visualized my father's face. I visualized Aunt Linda's diamonds. You always wanted attention. Tomorrow, I would give them the attention they deserved. The sun rose gray and cold on Friday morning. I put on my suit, the armor I had worn to the bank weeks ago. I drank my coffee black. I walked out the door. The end was beginning. The conference room at Redwood Crest Trust Services was designed to make human beings feel insignificant. The table was a slab of black marble that looked like a runway, and the windows offered a panoramic view of the city that reduced the people below to ants. I walked in at 8:50 in the morning, flanked by Marcus Thorne and Eleanor Vance. I expected a wall of fire. I expected my family to be sitting there in a phalanx, armored in their wealth and their shared narrative, ready to crush me. But as I stepped through the heavy glass doors, I realized the war had already taken a toll. They were not a united front. They were a ruin. My father sat at the head of the table, but he looked smaller than I had ever seen him. His skin was the color of old parchment, and his hands, usually so steady, were gripping his water glass as if it were the only thing tethering him to the earth. My mother sat next to him, but she was angled away, staring blankly at a painting on the far wall. Her eyes were red-rimmed. The real damage, however, was visible between my aunt and uncle. Uncle Robert was staring at Aunt Linda with a look of pure, unadulterated loathing. He was sitting as far away from her as the chair arrangement allowed. Linda, for her part, looked brittle. Her makeup was perfect, but her jaw was set so tight I could see the muscles jumping under the skin. And Caleb, my brother, wouldn't look at me. He was staring at his thumbs, hunched over like a teenager waiting for detention. I took my seat on the opposite side of the table. The distance between us was only 6 feet of marble, but it felt like an ocean. Mr. Sterling, the senior partner who had tried to block me, sat at the far end. He looked unhappy. Beside him sat 3 other members of the Board of Trustees, people I had never met, the true guardians of the institution. Let us begin, the board chair said. He was a man named Mr. Vance, no relation to Eleanor, and he had a voice like grinding stones. We are here to review the beneficiary complaint filed by Ms. Sarah Wood regarding the administration of the Hawthorne Family Growth Fund. My father cleared his throat. This is a family misunderstanding, he said, his voice raspy. We could have settled this privately. Mr. Vance looked at him over his spectacles. Mr. Wood, the allegations involve federal banking regulations and fiduciary breach. Private settlement is no longer an option. Ms. Vance, please present your findings. Eleanor stood up. She didn't look at my family. She looked at the data projected on the screen behind her. We have conducted a preliminary forensic review of the fund's activity over the last 36 months. Eleanor began. Her tone was clinical. We have identified a pattern of irregular disbursements totaling $4.2 million. A gasp went through the room. It came from my mother. She put a hand to her mouth. I wondered if she even knew the number. I wondered if my father had lied to her. 2. These disbursements, Eleanor continued, were categorized as consulting fees, property management, and educational loans. However, 90% of these payments were made to three entities: Apex Strategic Partners, Miller Design Group, and Blue Heron Holdings. She clicked a button. A chart appeared. Upon review of the corporate registrations, Eleanor said, "We found that Apex is registered to Caleb Wood. Miller Design Group is owned by a relative of Mrs. Linda Hawthorne. And Blue Heron is a shelf company with a mailing address identical to Mr. James Wood's private office." Uncle Robert slammed his hand on the table. "I told you," he hissed at my father. "I told you the structure was too obvious." "Robert, stop," Aunt Linda snapped. Eleanor ignored them. "Furthermore," she said, "we found evidence of structuring. There are 42 separate transfers of $9,900 made within a 48-hour period. This appears to be a deliberate attempt to evade the $10,000 reporting threshold mandated by the Bank Secrecy Act." The board members exchanged dark looks. Structuring wasn't just breaking the rules of the trust. It was a felony. "Mr. Sterling spoke up, his voice tight. "The family representative assured us these were legitimate operational expenses managed by the special committee. We relied on his certification." "The special committee," Marcus interrupted, leaning forward. "That is an interesting point." He slid a document across the marble. "We have reviewed the original trust declaration," Marcus said. "There is no provision for a special committee. The authority to manage these assets belongs solely to the trustee. The committee was a fiction created to bypass oversight." My father looked up. His eyes were dead. "We were trying to protect the principal," he whispered. "The market was crashing. We needed liquidity to save the properties." "By paying your son consulting fees?" Marcus asked. "By renovating a kitchen?" "It was asset enhancement," Aunt Linda cried out. She couldn't help herself. "It increases the value of the estate." "By draining the cash reserves?" Marcus countered. "That is not enhancement. Mrs. Hawthorne, that is looting." "Enough, Mr. Vance said. He looked at my father. "Mr. Wood, you have acted as the family representative for 3 years. Did you authorize these transfers?" My father opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at me. For a second, I saw the father he used to be, the one who taught me to ride a bike. But that man was gone. This was a man who had sold his daughter to save his lifestyle. "I authorized them," he croaked, "but I had the consent of the beneficiaries. Not all of them." I said. My voice rang out in the room. It was the first time I had spoken. "I did not consent. Dad." He looked at me with a mix of anger and pleading. "You were unavailable. Sarah, you were struggling. We had to make decisions. That brings us to the next item," Marcus said, "the claim of incapacity." He nodded to me. I reached into my bag and pulled out the yellowed envelope Elise had given me. The seal was broken, but the handwriting on the front was unmistakable. "I would like to submit this into evidence," I said. "It is a letter from the grantor, Samuel Hawthorne, my grandfather. Mr. Sterling went pale. He knew what was in that envelope. He had tried to shred it. I handed it to Mr. Vance. He put on his glasses and read it in silence. The room was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. "Read it into the record." "Please," I said. "Mr. Vance looked up. He cleared his throat. "To the board." He read, "If any beneficiary is excluded from information, or if any attempt is made to alter the distribution schedule without unanimous consent, the trust is to be immediately frozen. The discretion of the family representative is revoked. Protect Sarah. She is the conscience of this family." My mother let out a sob, a real one this time. "He never said that." She cried. "He loved us all equally." "He did," I said, looking at her. "That is why he wrote the letter, Mom. Because he knew you would do this. He knew you would try to eat the weak one." "I am not the weak one," I added softly. "Mr. Vance looked at the letter, then at the audit report. "This clause is self-executing," he said. "The moment Ms. Wood was excluded from the financial reporting, the family representative's authority was null and void. Every transaction made since that date is legally contestable." "But we had reason," Aunt Linda shouted. She stood up. her chair scraping against the floor. We excluded her because she is unstable. She is paranoid. We have reports from Dr. Arrington. You cannot hand control of a $50 million fund to a girl who thinks her family is spying on her. I looked at Marcus. He nodded. It was time for the kill shot. We dispute the validity of those reports, Marcus said, and we dispute the characterization of Ms. Wood's mental state. In fact, we believe the narrative of instability was a fabricated strategy designed to conceal the embezzlement. Fabricated? Aunt Linda laughed. A high, nervous sound. That is ridiculous. We love Sarah. We have been trying to get her help for years. I picked up my iPad. I connected it to the room's projection system. Then perhaps, I said, you can explain this. I pressed the button. The screenshots from the group chat appeared on the massive screen behind Eleanor. They were 10 feet tall. Every typo, every emoji, every cruel word was magnified for the board to see. The real family. I stood up and pointed to the screen. Date, October 1st. I read aloud. Mom, we need to cut Sarah out before she asks the wrong question. If she gets an audit, we are exposed. I looked at my mother. She had stopped crying. She was staring at the screen, her face drained of blood. Date, October 1st. I continued. Uncle Robert, if she triggers an audit, we bury her. We use the medical file. We paint her as a pariah. I turned to Uncle Robert. Is that love? Uncle Robert? I asked. Is burying me a form of affection? He didn't answer. He was looking at Mr. Vance, who was looking at him with an expression of absolute disgust. This is out of context. Aunt Linda stammered. It was a joke. We were blowing off steam. A joke? I asked. I swiped to the next image. Date, September 15th. I read, Aunt Linda. Just label it, consulting fees. No one checks. I looked at her. Is fraud a joke too? Linda? The board members were whispering to each other now. Mr. Sterling had his head in his hands. This is inadmissible, my father said weakly. You hacked a private device. I found it on a kitchen counter. Dad, I said, in plain sight, because you were so arrogant you thought I was too stupid to look. My mother stood up then. She looked small and trembling. She turned to the board, her hands clasped in front of her. Please, she said, her voice shaking. Please, you have to understand. We are a family. We stick together. Sarah has always been difficult. She has always been apart. We were just trying to hold it all together. You can't let her destroy us over a text message. It is loyalty. It is just family loyalty. Mr. Vance looked at her. He didn't blink. Mrs. Wood, he said. Did you sign the authorization for the transfer of funds to the Cayman Islands last Friday? My mother froze. James told me to, she whispered. Did you sign it? Mr. Vance repeated. Yes, she whispered. Then that is not loyalty. Madam, that is conspiracy. He turned to the board. I think we have seen enough. Wait, Aunt Linda said. She was desperate now. She pointed a finger at me. The medical reports. The restricted distribution notes. Those were filed by Dr. Arrington. They are medical documents. You cannot ignore a doctor's assessment just because of a group chat. I never touched those files. I am not a doctor. I looked at Eleanor. She nodded. She tapped her keyboard. A new slide appeared. It was a technical log, a series of numbers and timestamps. Mrs. Hawthorne, Eleanor said, we traced the submission of the restricted beneficiary notes. They were uploaded to the Redwood Crest portal on November 14th and July 2nd. So? Linda said. Dr. Arrington uploaded them. Doctor, Arrington's office is in Georgetown, Eleanor said, but the IP address that uploaded these documents is static. It is registered to a commercial suite in the downtown design district. Eleanor looked at Linda. It is registered to Miller Design Group. Your office, Mrs. Hawthorne. The room went silent. You wrote them. I said, looking at my aunt. You wrote the reports calling me crazy. You sat in your office, surrounded by the renovations my money paid for, and you typed up a lie that I was mentally unstable. Linda's mouth opened and closed. She looked at Robert for help, but he turned his back on her. She stammered. It is forgery, Marcus said calmly. It is identity theft. And since you used the internet to transmit it, it is wire fraud. Linda collapsed back into her chair. She put her face in her hands. Mr. Vance slammed his hand on the table. It sounded like a gunshot. This hearing is concluded, he announced. The board orders the following, effective immediately. 1. The role of family representative is abolished. 2. All assets of the Hawthorne Family Growth Fund are frozen. 3. Mr. James Wood, Mrs. Catherine Wood, Mr. Robert Hawthorne, Mrs. Linda Hawthorne, and Mr. Caleb Wood are removed as beneficiaries pending the result of a federal investigation. Removed? My father gasped. You can't remove us. It is our money. It was never your money. Mr. Vance said, his voice cold. It was Samuel Hawthorne's money, and you have violated every condition he set for its use. He turned to me. Ms. Wood, he said, as the sole remaining beneficiary in good standing. The trust will look to you for guidance on the reallocation of funds. Once the forensic accounting is complete, we will also be forwarding our findings to the district attorney's office. He stood up. Good day. The board members filed out. Eleanor packed up her laptop. Marcus squeezed my shoulder. We did it, he whispered. I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt hollow. I stood up and looked across the table. My family sat in the wreckage. My father was staring at his hands. My mother was weeping silently. Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert were not looking at each other. Caleb was just staring at me, his eyes wide and frightened. Sarah, my father said. He didn't look up. I waited. What have you done? He whispered. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had taught me that family was everything, and then proved that money was the only thing that mattered. I didn't do this. Dad, I said, I just turned on the lights. I turned and walked toward the door. Sarah, my mother called out. Sarah, wait. Where are you going? We need to talk. We need to fix this. I paused at the glass doors. I looked back at them one last time. There is nothing to fix. Mom, I said, the account is closed. I pushed the doors open and walked out. I took the elevator down to the lobby. My heart was beating a slow, steady rhythm. I felt light. The weight of the secret, the weight of the exclusion, was gone. But as I stepped out of the elevator, I saw the chaos. The lobby was filled with cameras. Reporters were shouting. Flashes were going off. Ms. Wood, Ms. Wood, is it true the fund is insolvent? Ms. Wood, are your parents being indicted? Sarah, look over here. I stopped. How did they know? The hearing was confidential. Then I saw a familiar face near the revolving doors. It was a cousin from the extended side of the family. Someone who wasn't in the fund. Someone who had always resented my father's branch. He was holding a phone, talking to a reporter. The leak. The fractures in the family ran deeper than just us. The rot had spread, and now the vultures were circling. I saw my reflection in the glass of the revolving door. I looked composed. I looked strong. But I saw the sadness in my eyes. My private pain was now public currency. Tomorrow, my face would be on the front page of the business section. Heiress exposes family fraud. The Hawthorne collapse. I pushed through the doors into the cold November air. The reporters swarmed me, thrusting microphones in my face. Sarah, do you have a comment? Do you blame your family? I stopped on the sidewalk. I looked at the cameras. I thought about the group chat. We bury her. I looked directly into the lens of the nearest camera. My grandfather believed in truth. I said, my voice steady. Today we honored that. That is all. I walked to the curb where Marcus had a car waiting. I got in. As the car pulled away, I looked back at the glass tower. I could see the figures of my family standing in the window of the 34th floor, looking down. They were small. They were trapped. I was free. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if I would want restoration or revenge, or if I would just take my share and vanish into a new life. But I knew one thing. I would never be the one waiting for an invitation again. Thank you for listening to Sarah's story. It is a harsh look at how money can poison the blood that binds us, and how silence is often the most dangerous weapon in a family's arsenal. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Have you ever experienced a moment where you realized your family's narrative about you was a lie? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the darker side of human nature, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of betrayal, justice, and the cold, hard truth. Until next time, keep your eyes open and trust your instincts.